Well, howdy, folks. It's Mike again, and this is going to be another fundamentals one. We are going to focus on margins. If somehow I'm doing well on time, I'll also do return on equity, but probably going to keep that for another session. I've recorded sales growth, quarterly earnings, and annual earnings, and those are more important than this one, frankly. So it doesn't mean that you can't watch this one now, but you definitely want to watch those. And I would do it in that order: the sales, quarterly earnings, then the annual earnings, if you haven't watched them already. And those, that's at the core. The margins and return on equity are kind of extras. And people would always ask the question of like, how did Bill always kind of figure his way into the best stock in the market or one of the best stocks in the market? And really, it was the extra stuff. It was things like sponsorship. It was the story and him being able to grasp it to not to a level of detail that most people would think. I mean, very, very high level that he would get into something, but if he could understand it, and that's why he would do like retail stocks. For example, like Pick and Save was one of his biggest plays, and that was kind of like Big Lots, but now that Big Lots has gone out of business. So if you've never been in one, just like kind of a bargain store, like an Ollie's discount kind of closeout type of merchandise in the vein of a Dollar Tree, 99 cent store, Marshalls, kind of not exactly that, like Big Lots. That was as close as it really gets for kind of obvious reasons. But anyways, then he could, or Price Company, which was before Costco, that he got into after only the first few stores. I think like first two or three stores, and then he held that for a long time because he could see like, oh, okay, he could understand it. You know, people were, instead of going into like a Walmart or a Kmart back in the day, or just a normal grocery store, they would go into this warehouse with no frills around it and buy in bulk. And it was all about doing volume rather than the margins. And so that's something he could understand. And then he would look at the margins on that particular company versus other ones in its group. And if it was superior in return on equity or margins, as well as having the basic other fundamentals, the sales and the earnings. And so it wasn't to replace it, it was kind of this extra little something on there. And then he would have more conviction in it. So this is a level of kind of for position trading. I mean, if you're just a swing trader, dude, don't even watch this. Like, go and watch my technical ones, which most of them are on charts and related. If you're curious, you can watch this, but this is not going to help you for swing trading. This is for position trading, or even if you're even longer than normal position trading, you like to hold things for a long time, like years and years, this would be for you. So I've got something for everyone, hopefully. On this is going to be the 46th or so. I'm not sure when I'm going to release this. I'm recording this Saturday morning, November 8th. I recorded one yesterday. It's been a long week, but I'm just trying to get a bunch in the can because I'm going to be doing a bunch of traveling between now and the end of the year. So I've got to get a bunch of these out. This might not even be released until next year. So we'll see. But anyways, let's get into it. We'll get as far as we can go. I am going to be going to my favorite Mexican restaurant locally here in Austin. I'm not at liberty to say what that could be. Like, I don't know where I could possibly be going that has the best food around and the best manager, Joel. I haven't seen him in a while, but what a nice guy. He goes around to every table and like checks in and sees how they're doing, and just the best food, a total hole in the wall. But if you are ever in Austin, you've got to go figure out where it is. I don't know where that could be. Who knows? You know, maybe there's hints. I don't know. But anyways, I'm hungry and I want to go. I did my morning walk and gym and all that good stuff. I was super bummed. I was going down to see Stevie Ray Vaughan, which I love to do almost every weekend. And man, there's some sort of festival going on, and it was just a madhouse. So I went and did the steps at Mount Bonnell. I think that's how you pronounce it, and that was fun. Anyways, enough about that. You're not here to talk about that. You're here to learn about margins. So let's get into this. I'm going to share Hopefully I'm getting a little bit more efficient. I'm a slow learner. What are you going to do? Okay, so I've built a bunch of screens on here, and we'll get through as many of them as we can. And as if you've been watching these, you'll see kind of how I like to build screens, at least for teaching purposes, is start off with a Loose Lucy screen, a nod to the Grateful Dead. If you don't know the song Loose Lucy, I'm sorry for you. You must have bad taste in music. Maybe I can help you out with that. We'll see. Not their best song, but certainly a fun song. So this first one is focused on after-tax margins. You know what? Yeah, we could start there. We're going to just focus on the after-tax margins. This in our database we have in quarterly. If you have access to something that has this on an annual basis, you can do it that way too. It's just kind of how Bill always had things set up, as pre-tax on an annual basis and after-tax on a quarterly basis. Not sure if he had any rationale for that, or that was just how it kind of was, and we've all just worked with that. So just some basic parameters: stock above $10, 50 or not 50, $5 million volume. This is very important. This is dollar volume, not share volume. Click on here, dollar volume. Then it's just some kind of placeholders in here for the after-tax margin, just saying that for each of the last quarters, the last 4 quarters, it had to be above 15%. And I like doing this to kind of see how the data falls. So you start off with 10,900 stocks and ETFs in the database, put some volume parameters down to it, and then that's 3,600, but that's still including ETFs. Then you put an after-tax margin in there, and now you're just under 1,000 for the most recent quarter. Then you have that same parameter for 4 quarters, and you still have 800 stocks. So what is that telling me? It's very lenient, that it's very easy to get, because if there's 800 stocks in the database and let's just get rid of these 2 things, the price and volume. So that's telling you that if you only have these parameters and you don't have any price and volume parameters on there, you have 1,200 stocks. So that's not too restrictive. You can always play with this and let's bump this up to 25 and see what happens there. That brings it down to 700. So we're going to just put this back the way we found it, pretend like we're camping or something. And let's see, $10 there. And what did we have? Dollar volume. You put a 5,000 there, and that translates to 5 million, because we like to confuse people. I don't know why we do the silly things we do. We're working on lots of changes. Okay, so that was an informational screen, not a screen to really use. Now let's go to our mild. You can tell I'm thinking in salsa terms. We're going to go to mild and just put a few more things in here. So we've got $10, the same $5 million volume, the same after-tax numbers in here at 15%, but then we put an annual one in there of the annual pre-tax numbers at the same level, 15%, just to see what that would do, because it's a little mixing and matching because you've got pre-tax and after-tax, but it was kind of just a placeholder there. And you could certainly, that up. We could put that up to, pre-tax. Oh, I mean the after-tax, this one here. We can bump this one up to, let's say, 25. And that brings it down to 396. So this is a good thing to really understand how the data, I'm putting it back the way I found it at 15, to understand how the data falls, and then also to give yourself an idea of how much to tweak things. And the more you build screens, the more you'll learn how to do them and how to not be too tight. And that's why I always like to do this from a very loose to mild to medium to super tight, so people can understand. You're always better off keeping it loose. But if you keep it loose, then you have to look at a lot of stocks. And so you have to balance how much time you have. So if you were running screens midweek, presumably have less time during the week to run your screen, so you would lean on tighter ones. But on the weekend, when you have more time, or whenever you have more time, if it's every other Tuesday or something like that, then you would want to do your looser screens to look at more things. So what I did in here is added the annual sales there of at least 100 million. That's, I'll show you where to find that. That's at the bottom of the sales. Here, total annual sales in millions. So I just put that at, and you can see it just bumped it down a little bit. So let's just say if we wanted to add another zero, what would that do? Just curious. So it brings it down to 520. But let's just put it back to the 100, and we'll move on to the next screen. So now we're going to go on to our medium. And what did we change here? So what we did is we kept the same price and volume parameters, and the margin requirement, we kept it at 15%, both for pre and after tax. But we included a few more quarters in here. So we have this up to 6 quarters back, and you can just find this. This is all in this margins and ratios down in here. And no, we're not going to talk about dividends. Should I explain why? I really should, because I got to stop sharing for a second. Okay, so we don't use dividends in this style of trading. Bill didn't use it. I don't use it. They're very important for some people, and certainly for value style trading, dividends are not everything, but close to it, because you're looking at the cash flows, right? And there's so many folks who do the discounted cash flow analysis, and it's a big deal in the industry. And then you're looking at, where are you getting your money back? So when you're a value trader or investor, I should say, not trader, you're holding things for long periods of time, and you're wanting to get that money back. Now, you can always sell your stock, and then you get your money back that way. But we don't focus on dividends, because dividends tend to historically have been at a different part of a company's life cycle. Think about it. You're starting off a company. The last thing you're doing, if you're in the rapid growth phase that we're trying to get, is to want to just give money back to your shareholders. Why would you want to do that? You would want to do that to bring in a new set of investors, because there's some investors who will only trade dividend stocks. So you would broaden out your shareholder base that way. That's one thing to do it. And it's also, you have so much cash that you don't know what to do with it. So you figure just give it back to folks, which is kind of silly if you think about it, because you're investing in a company, and I would prefer them to just build up their balance sheet. Like if they've got so much free cash flow and they just want to give it back to us, I'd rather them just hold on to that, because you go through bear markets, and then bear markets, then you need that cash. And then what ends up happening, they do offerings. So now they split their pie even more, and they dilute their shares, and then their share price goes down. So why not just save it for a rainy day and just invest it in cash equivalents, and just have a huge stockpile? Like Apple ended up doing that, and they've got dividends and all too, but that's because they're such a cash cow. So what we're trying to do is get at that on that life cycle part of their. You start off, you're just a tiny little mom and pop, and then eventually it grows, or maybe you started from some private equity company or something, essentially, and starting up with an idea, and then you get some investors, and then they go public, and then it's growing rapidly, and you want that money just flowing back in for either R&D. R&D was a big thing that Bill would look at. The percent of sales that were spent on R&D, you would look at more R&D spend as a better thing, because it means that they're planning for the future. Or just buying inventory, building out factories, what have you, building out stores if it's a retailer. So you're really wanting the company to use the money. And that's why we don't care about dividends. It's not that dividends aren't important and that dividends aren't valuable and that dividends don't have a purpose. It's just that they don't match what we're looking for, because we're looking for those model book type moves that have these rapid advances over a relatively short period of time, let's say 6 months to a couple of years or so. And you're trying to get that sweet spot in there. And then eventually when they get so big, then they've got all this money and they do start giving out dividends, because it does make sense to have a larger shareholder base, because that does help in bear markets as well, because you've got all those dividend folks out there who are going to buy. But that's why we don't focus on dividends. Typically, Bill would just say, we don't care about dividends, and just boom, dividends don't matter. Like, Bill could get away with that. I can't get away with that. So I'm trying to explain it to you. It would take longer to explain it in more detail, but I think you kind of get the picture. Hopefully you do. So again, in a nutshell, we're looking for stocks that are growing. Yes, they can have dividends, but we're not looking for the really fat dividends, the really big dividend plays. And so that's why we're not screening on it. And so anyways, we'll get back to our regularly scheduled program. And that wasn't a true rambles, right? There was no music involved with that. So we are going in, so here's your pre-tax or your after-tax margins. And here, each one of those quarters, let's scroll on down. You get your P stuff. I'm not going to don't get me started. Oh man, there's so many things I could talk about. And then return on equity in there, you get some price of sales. Price of sales is valuable, but that's not what we're talking about today. So sales, this is what we were going to say. The sales percent change for the last quarter, 15%. Annual sales, we bumped that up to 250 million, and we have all these quarters in here. So now we're down to 222 stocks. So let's look and see what we have down here. And what I've done is built in this data, which you can go over here to this little drop down, and it's a custom layout. And I just customize it. What did we call this? This is the margins and return on equity one. Let's just go into the customization of it. So I can click in here, and let's say I want some earnings information, earnings last reported. I could just bring it down here, drop it. If I want to get rid of it, I just put it up here. If I want to move these in a different order, I can do that, and then just save and apply. And every once in a while, there's some bugs in there that just drive me crazy, but most of the time it works. So we're going to go ahead and these are all the things that I have in here. So all those after-tax margins, margins accelerating, fiscal earnings, just general information. What's the composite rating? What's the EPS rating? What's the market cap? Dollar volume? Just it's very helpful. But most of the time, I'm not going all the way over here on the right side to things. So we're just going to cancel out of that. So let's look at this, and let's just sort it by, what should we sort it by? Let's sort it by the after-tax margin for the most recent quarter. See what the biggest number is there. Sometimes with these big numbers, some funky stuff. So that's just a REIT. That's a whole different can of worms we're not going to get into. Let's go to our first other one. So here is this biotech, and those are kind of a special breed, but looks like it's earning money, and it's going from a negative phase to a positive phase. So and it's also coming out of something. So that would be something worth researching. I tend to not trade many individual biotechs. The smaller ones, I'll trade the really large ones, but that one looks like it's making money. Let's go in here. I'll click on this so you can see the names of them. So you've got let me make this a little bigger. Yeah, if we sort it in alpha, you'll probably be a little more familiar with some of these. All right, so let's go to our next screen. And this is the tight version of it. So this is the one that I would actually probably go and use. And so let's see what we did here. Same price and volume, all these parameters were the same. Sales were the same, 250 million, same thing for the last quarter. So all of this is the same. Then I just said, I only want to look at ones that are at least above their 200-day. I can go down to within 5% of its 50 days. So maybe it's base building and it's underneath the 50-day a little bit. And now that brings it down to 120 names. And let's just sort that by annual sales to see what's at the top there. So you've got Google and Microsoft and NVIDIA, Tencent, Taiwan Semi, Broadcom, all these ones that you're probably familiar with, and because they have a lot of sales, let's sort it by the ones with the smallest amount of sales. And so you've got some banks in here. IMAX. Everyone knows IMAX. So look at that from a margin standpoint. That's where, without even looking at the stock much, so the chart is, base after base after base and moving higher. Let's just look at these numbers. So you've got your sales are negative year over year, it looks like. That's problematic. Then you've got your return on equity at 17. We'll talk about that in a little bit. That's good. Your average return on equity over 5 years is 8.8. So it's accelerating from there. That's a positive. Your pre-tax margins are 18% acceptable. Your after-tax margins, that's annual, and the after-tax margin for your most recent quarter is 24.6. Last quarter, 20. Quarter before that, 16, and so on, just so you can kind of see what info is there. Let's look at what else we have. Are they accelerating? Yes, we'll talk about that soon. Your trailing 4-quarter EPS, how much of the earnings on there. And just, this is helpful information, but probably the best thing is just going through the screen. Now, we could tighten that up further because we saw that the IMAX on the annual sales were negative. So let's just say if this is going to be tight, we said the last quarter had to be 15%. Let's see what happens if we do the annual sales at 15%. Put it in there. That brings it down to 65 stocks. So let's sort that by the sales growth in there. And you've got some biotechs, but you've got Credo here, NVIDIA, Slide, Insurance, and so on. So I'm going to put this back the way I found it. But that's how you always feel like you can just add and tweak and delete from any custom screen, because you should. So that's your basics on your after-tax margins. Let's look at after-tax margins that are accelerating, and we will look at the loose version of it first. And so what this is saying that, because these are quarterly numbers and we like them to be at an inflection point, and that's essentially where each quarter of the last 3 are higher than the prior one. So basic $10, $5 million volume. After tax, we're just keeping with that 15%. There's nothing magical about 15. It was just, I had to pick a number as a placeholder, and I didn't want it too tight and I didn't want it too loose. So you can adjust it however you like, and you can make it more restrictive for the most recent quarter and so on. That's makes sense. But this is what we're focusing on, the after-tax margins acceleration. And I have clicked that to yes. So what does that mean? You can just read it in here, but by clicking on that, just that each of the last quarters are higher than the last one. So let's sort this by our largest margin. So after-tax margin down here. Okay, so this one, that I ran as 160 for the most recent quarter. Last quarter is 127, the one before that 81, the one before that 56. And look, I mean, it's had this massive run. Let's go over to the daily. And you can see, you had this margin expansion, and what did the stock do? It had this massive run. Down here, you can put the margin information. So it's after-tax margins are in this area, but you can select, just go in here and you could do pre-tax, and then you can see that it changes it down there. I'm wondering if maybe there's we might be getting the data from different places for the display here versus the other one. So lots of funky stuff going on. We're working on basically redesigning everything in the background, so that wouldn't surprise me. So return on equity, you can just click on it here, and then now you've got the quarterly return on equity down there. So just a little trick, quarterly block, data block in here, and that shows up on your daily one. All right, so that was your after-tax margins acceleration loose. Now let's go to your tight one. And what did we do here? So same liquidity and price, same basic ones in here, 15% for all these things. We added back all the other margins in there for 3 quarters back, 4, 5, 6 quarters back. put our annual sales figure at 250 million. That the sales last quarter had to be 15% above your 200-day, within 5% of your 50, and then that it was accelerating. We have that as a yes. So let's look at it. This is probably going to be a good list of stocks. And let's sort this by sales for the last year, because we know that that's probably something we wanted to put in there, and look at the ones that are growing the fastest. So Credo, look at these numbers. Here it is on a return on equity, but let's go over to your after-tax margins. So 17%, 33%, 38%, 44%. That is a beautiful thing. I should say this. I say this on every episode, and if I don't, this is a blanket statement for any that I forget. I am not an investment advisor. I'm not giving investment advice. I am just simply recording something so if you have trouble sleeping, that you can listen to it. That's probably the best use of these, based on the number of viewers we have. So, what are you going to do? I'm a little obsessed with that at the moment. Okay, so because I'm competitive, man. Like, come on. 45 episodes in the viewership. Come on. I got to look in the mirror and figure out what it is I'm doing wrong. Anyways, if you're going to spend time doing something, you want it to be successful. And some people have said it's successful. Maybe I'm not being patient enough. I see a lot of the stuff that's on YouTube with a ton of views, and I'm just going, wow, man, like I should be getting at least as many views as that, but it is what it is. So you can also see that info down in here. If you're very good with Excel, what you could do is put all of the items in there and just dump this into Excel and do a bunch of OR statements but that's, everyone's not comfortable with that, and we should just make it easier in here. So this is your after-tax margins. We can probably just wrap this up now, but you know what? We'll just keep going. We'll just do them all. I'll just try to power through the rest of these. So that's your information in there. So now let's go to our next file, and this is your pre-tax margin. So you'll get the same, it's the same basic thing, but these are on annual numbers. So let's go into our loosey version. This gives you what I call the phone book, basically everything. You kids don't know what a phone book is, and dude, that's great, man, because we used to actually have these big books like this that you'd have to go through. If you want to find someone's number, you'd have to search through and look in the yellow pages. And so whenever I just get too many back, I just call it the phone book. And then there was, I think you could dial like 411, but then I think they started charging like $1 every time if you didn't know the phone number for a place. So I think they did. So just putting the 15% in there, that gives us 1,100 names. So that's not useful. So let's go to our mild version. What we did is we put this, put this to 10%. That was a mistake. That should have been 15, sorry. 15, and annual sales at the 250 million. I choose round numbers. Some screens I'll use 50 million, some 100 million, some 250 million, some a lot higher than that. It just depends on what I'm looking for. But for right now, 100 to 250 million makes the most sense for what we're looking at. And then just saying that the sales are at least growing at 10%. So let's look at those results and see what we've got. And there's going to be a lot of overlap because we're looking at margins, but just sliced a different way. So here we've got Google, Microsoft, Meta, Morgan Stanley, Taiwan, Qualcomm, Norvo, Netflix, Amgen. I have a position in Amgen, and I don't know when this is going to be released. So just assume that I have a position in every stock that we talk about, because I don't want to forget or buy something on Monday or right before I release this or something. So just as a blanket statement for all of mine, just assume I have a position. So a lot of quality stocks in here. And then also think in terms of when you put the annual requirement of 250 million, that really ends up helping to limit the junk that you get in there. But and all these are much higher. Let's sort it by the lowest in sales. So probably more companies that you're not as familiar with, but doesn't mean you want to ignore them because they all start off that way where you don't know them at first. So let's go on to medium. We'll get the Tums ready. All right, so what did I do here? I bumped these up to 50. Oh, that's why it was at 10% on the other one. I bumped this up to pre-tax at 15%, and I also did the dollar volume at 25 million. So it's just different ways that you can tweak it. I'm just kind of just showing you little examples. So let's bump this pre-tax up to 20 and see what happens. So it goes from 140 down to 113. And you can just mess with any of these. Let's just bump this up to the sales growth for last year. Let's bump that up to 25 and 25 for the most recent quarter. And so that brings us to 46 names. Now let's sort this by annual sales. And again, a lot of the same names in here. UDC and Coinbase and some gold stocks, Robinhood, Palantir, Datadog, SoFi. And notice we don't have anything on there technically related. These are all just based on just the fundamentals. So let's see what I did with tight. Okay, so with tight, we also did the $25 million volume. We did do the pre-tax at 25%, annual sales at 250 million, the sales for the last quarter at 15. Let's bump that up to 25. And let's do the last quarter sales at 25. So we're going to just go 25 across the board here. And so now we have 16 names. Let's look at this. And you know what? Let's put this to at least at its 50-day. Make this a little tighter. So 16 names, very manageable. And no, yeah, let's sort it by the pre-tax margin. Highest one. So NVIDIA, IDCC, a Chinese name, the Futu, SBS. Let's look at that. That's interesting. So water supply over there, RS Line Blue Dot. We talked about that in a previous one. So sometimes you find some interesting ones that you wouldn't have thought of. First Solar, that had a monster move back in the day. Eli Lilly, I'm trading that now. Some more gold stocks, Micron. Man, did I mishandle that one and not in that. Wow, what a shame. Look at that move that it had. And all the fundamental information was there. I mean, that's just inexcusable. I can't believe I missed that. Okay, so that's after-tax margins and pre-tax margins. Let's go on to return on equity because they always kind of go together. And Bill would typically say, he'd either wanted to have good margins or a good return on equity. He'd prefer to have both, but it was an or statement. And if it didn't have at least one of them, lots of times he wouldn't play. So on the very basic level, just to get familiar with this, we went back to our normal low price, $10 and $5 million volume, and then just put a return on equity of 17% in there. So that's just right here. ROE last reported. And all it is, it's just a measure that Bill kind of honed in on because when he was looking at all the key variables, doing the models, that he looked at everything and he found that the return on equity at 17 or higher really kind of separated out the okay stocks from the great stocks. And so that's one of the numbers that you would never hear him say 16% or 18%. He was stuck on 17%. And he was very picky. If something was 16%, he'd be like, well, that's too low. Now, he wanted it higher than 17%, but he would be fine with 17%. So there's only 900 stocks there that even have that. Let's go to medium because that's just not a helpful screen. So we bumped up our return on equity a little bit to 20. Now you're dealing with 700 stocks. Then we put our pre-tax margins in there at 20. After-tax margins at 15%, because it makes sense to be a little stricter with the pre-tax for obvious reasons. then just above the 200-day within 5% of the 50-day, and then at least 250 million in sales. And let's see what we have here. Let's sort this by return on equity. And you got AbbVie in there, Amgen, Apple, AppLovin, Nvidia, KLAC, Lilly again, 3M. A lot of companies you're probably familiar with: Qualcomm, Dave, PDD, Datadog again, Gilead. Lots of cool stuff in there. And Palantir is down there. Let's see. All right, so now let's move to tight. So basically the same thing for the volume and the sales, or the price and volume. Bump that up to 25 million. Return on equity, we bumped up to something that would really make them, kind of perk up. 25%. Put the pre-tax margins up to 25%, where you kind of like them. After tax at 15%. Above the 50 and the 200-day, 250 million in sales. And then just put the last 2 quarters of earnings up 25%. And there's a lot more that we could put on there. And it just reminds me of, when you get Bill's book the first time and you start going through all the things that he cares about, and you build your first custom screen, well, what do you find? Like, it gets like no stocks in there, or maybe 1 or 2 stocks, because there's lots of or statements, and there's a lot more judgment and an art to things. It's like, okay, well, it doesn't have this value, but it has this other value. And that's why I was saying, always start off with the loosey version to get a sense for how the data is. In fact, what you could do is, if you're somewhat familiar with Excel, you could take the data, then, all the data, you just say all stocks in there, put the report item, export it to Excel, build a distribution of it, just sort it from the lowest number on any value to the highest number, and then kind of look at that distribution. Is it a normal bell curve, or is it skewed a little bit? That's a way to really learn the data, and then also know that it will change depending on if it's fundamental data, depend on like kind of where we are in the economy. Technical data, the same thing. Are you in a bull market or a bear market? How that data falls, but something of value for you hardcore folks out there. But look at this, very restrictive, and you've got quality names in there. You've got your Nvidia, you've got your Taiwan Semi, your Broadcom, your Lilly, your Lam Research, that SBS again, your AppLovin, your IDCC. So you wouldn't want this to be a screen that is the only thing you use, because obviously there's only 9 stocks. But if you were building a screen of screens, kind of like what I did with the Growth 250, where there's a bunch of screens that go into one list, that's where this could be a targeted one for like really quality earnings and return on equity and margins, and put that in there. Okay, so we did after-tax margins, pre-tax margins, return on equity. Now I'm going to show you something very helpful. I think it's extremely helpful. And if you weren't paying attention before, pay attention now. Come on, shame on you. If you weren't paying attention, you've fallen asleep, I don't blame you. Okay, so let's look at this. This is a way to harness our database to figure out what is the best stock in a sector or group. I don't like our groups. We're changing our groups right now. We're in this process of going from them, because I do not like anything that we do with our group. In fact, I haven't used our group rank or group relative strength 15, 20 years, maybe. I just use our sectors, which we don't have ratings on, because I've just had so many problems with how we do things, but we are finally changing that. And so I'm really looking forward to that. And I'll talk about that next year, because I'm redesigning every one of our ratings that we have from EPS on down, rebuilding pattern rec, and I'm redoing the Growth 250. So I've got a lot on my plate right now. It's keeping me beyond busy. But we're going to have much better products and ratings and everything once we're done with all the phases of this. The first phase will get us to a certain point, but then from there, we really need to build on it. But the industry group stuff, I'm really excited about. Anyways, so we're going to focus on sectors, not industry groups on here. So this is a way that probably most of you don't use, but if you just go into the industry and sector, which is right here, and then let's say you specifically want to just look at aerospace and defense, or let's say banks west and southwest for some reason, you can just click include and then click on that, and then you're screening just for those. But what I like to do is your broad sectors, and sectors is a concept that Bill came up with, because I think he never vocalized it, but I think he realized that there was something that was deficient with the groups, and he didn't quite know how to put his finger on it. So he decided to start going with these broad sectors. On the institutional side, we had sectors as well. We had like 12 sectors, and then 89 sectors, and then the 197 groups. But those didn't, like the 11 or 12 sectors, those were too broad. And then the 89 those were, it was too few. And then the 89 was too many. And so this is like in the 30, I think it's like 33 different ones. And it was, again, it was a Bill idea, and I really, really dug it. And then I did a bunch of work with him on it after that, of like the best stocks in the sector, and the number of new highs in the sector and new lows. And we sliced the paper a lot that way. And that was the two of us doing that. But the original idea came from him. So you can pick any of these broad sectors like utilities, rather than, if you do it on a group basis, then it does give you the ability to say, okay, I want utilities that are electric or gas or water, or just your general ones. Or let's say you're looking at retail. That's where it would be helpful, is, you want to look at just department stores, or you want to look at home furnishings or internet ones. You can be specific there. But for now, we're just going to do these broad sectors. So let's just say you want to do software. There's 350 names there. Then put in your custom layout in here, any of the things down in here that you want to look at. You could use it for technicals, you could use it for fundamentals, you could use it for a blend of them. But for this one, we're going to stick with the margins. And so let's say we're just looking at this sector, and we want to see who has the highest pre-tax margins in software. So let's do after-tax margins. So you'll see that the after-tax margin, you've got checkpoint. Okay, but checkpoints underneath the 200-day or the 40-week line there, that's fine. But it's a little problematic, because let's sort it by sales. You're going to have some of these in here that have just no, I'll just space bar through these. Look at these. I mean, they're just total junk, and things that you don't even want. They shouldn't even be in your universe to study. So let's go into our medium version. It's still that same sector, but we're saying, you know what? We want to at least have it above $10 and above $5 million volume. So at least we're not getting those little low price total pieces of junk. And now we've gone from, what was that? Here was our full list, 350 names. Now still that same sector, and that's 158 names. And just with those basic things. So now if you sort through it, it's a lot. Let's sort it by the smallest amount of sales. And you're still going to get junk in there. These things that are kind of just all over the place, or like, yeah, I don't really care to look at SoundHound right now if I'm looking at software that's something that's in that position. But let's go to a tight. And what did we do here? We said we bumped it up to $25 million volume, said it had to be above the 50 and the 200-day. Now we've got that down to 43 names. So this is going to be much more. This is probably going to be the one that you would want to use, and the one that I would use. Let's look at this by the lowest amount of sales. So recent IPO, the white fiber, NBIS, JFrog, things that are more that you would actually be concerned with. And how you use this is you're saying, okay, I want to look and see what has the best margins in this group. And now I'm going to sort it by margins, and you can see, oh, well, App 11 has the best after-tax margin on the last quarterly basis, and then this XZO has the second most, and then Palantir the third most. Very, very, very helpful. And I would do this stuff for Bill and with Bill all the time in our Wanda product. I built something that did something like this, frankly, a lot better. Now, was an institutional product. So now let's go to tighter. I kind of did this like Dumb and Dumber, tight and then tighter. I got to come up with a better word for it. I'll keep doing that. All right. So now we bumped it up to really much more quality. By quality, I mean the dollar volume, $75 million volume, still above the 50 and the 200-day, the sales at 250 million or more. They had decent sales growth, 15%, decent earnings for the last quarter at 15%. And now we only have 16 names. So this is much more of probably what you're really trading or looking to trade, anywhere from App 11 down to Zscaler. You can do the same thing once you build this, even though it says sector on there, we can change this. Let's go into your sector thing. Let's just reset that. Boom, reset it. That's 117 names for all. You know what? Let's go to this one that was just tight instead of tighter and do the same thing. We're going to get rid of the sector. So now we have 996. Let's say we just want to do one particular industry group. Now let's pick one. Which one do you guys want? Let's look through. What? I still can't hear you. That joke has gotten old already? Yeah, I'm a father. Like, what do you expect? It's a dad joke. Let's do something in retail. There's no stocks in there. Let's do restaurants. Only 2 stocks. So we just clicked on this, 2 stocks that fit this, yum, and let's do retail specialty, nothing even fits it. Retail leisure, 1 stock. Retail internet. Okay, we've got a few in here. So we've got PDD, Baba, Amazon, Vips, Wayfair, and I'm trading some of these. I'm trading Wayfair and Amazon right now. Just have to say it for compliance reasons. Who knows? I could sell it tomorrow. Let's look and see medical bios. So this one, you've now eliminated so many of them in here because we just have some basic requirements. Let's say we wanted to be super tight. Let's go over to tighter. Maybe I should have done like super tight, like super bad. It's such a good movie. If your kid don't watch it, I don't think it's appropriate. Check with your parents. Let's do semi-fabulous. Okay, so then you have 8 stocks in here. AMD, Broadcom, Credo, NVIDIA, Rambus, and so on. Let's do energy coal. So I'm just trying to find some interesting ones in here. Let's say insurance. Let's say you want to start trading insurance. Nothing of it makes it through insurance. Let's do, Lemonade. That's the one insurance company that I've actually traded. Let's do leisure services. Nothing in there. Leisure toys, nothing. And you just click one by one, and then biotechs. Let's do biotechs with this. So once you put these restrictions on here, you only have 5 to choose from. And there are a lot of names in that group. Oh, this is what I want. That's what I was thinking, the gold. So if you're trading a group that kind of all moves together and you want to be a stock picker in there, lots of times I just prefer to just go with the ETF. But if you are wanting to, this becomes very helpful, and you can look and see, okay, which ones has the best margins? Okay, AEM and NEM, that makes sense. What about from a pre-tax standpoint? Okay, AEM and letter B. And if you want to do it from return on equity, well, AU and NEM. With each one of these, you can start seeing which one ends up being at the top part of multiple ones. So this is something I would play with a lot, and I would also build this on technicals. Let's say you're trading oil and gas or something. You can click in there and see if none of those are even. This one had 2 in the transport and pipeline, and then in the exploration that you've got 3. So this is a real time saver. And how I would use that is a group is starting to run, maybe just start off with with the medium version, just so you exclude all the really low price stocks and the really illiquid ones. And then once you start getting a feel for it, you can be a bit tighter in there. Oh, I know the group that I was wanting to do was, let's go with just tight, and we're going to go in the retail space, because I just wanted to express how retail can be very different depending on what type of retail. Where's retail? Okay. So your apparel and shoes are going to have, if you're dealing with like a Buckle or a Boot Barn or a AEO or a Gap, those are going to have different types of margins. And you can see that here. So these are, in the 20s and down to, 6%, versus if you were going to, well, let's just click through each one of these. I was really looking for Costco. Which one is Costco in? Oh, for internet. Oh, here, let's just do it the old fashioned way. If you ever wondered, just go up, pull up Costco, retail major discount chains. Okay. So we're going to go retail discount. There it is. Nothing even popped through. Let's just do with the medium. And we're going to get rid of sectors. Sorry, should have prepped more, but really, I didn't even have the time to do this. Just being honest. Okay. So here's the broader category with just using the price and the volume parameters. And you can see that like a Costco, and this is why it's very important to compare apples with apples. Costco, a very well-run, the stock isn't doing well right now, but a very well-run company has got a 3.8 margin, an after-tax margin of 3%, but a really strong return on equity. So when you're dealing with an industry that has lower margins, then you want to look at them relative to themselves. That's why it's really hard having just a blanket, oh, you want 25% margins. Well, you're not going to get a 25% margin in a Costco. It's just not what they're not even trying to do that. They're trying to go with the volume. So that's where you want to compare apples with apples. So you would do a Costco versus a Walmart, even though it's not truly apples to apples. Walmart has their Sam's Club. If that was spun off, then that would be truly apples to apples. But you get like the BJ wholesale and stuff. But anyways, this is a very powerful way of harnessing our database. So please use it, and you can slice this a million ways. I'm sure you're thinking right now, oh, you want to put in composite rating and the 3-month RS and the 6-month RS and the 12-month RS and the percent off high and ATR and all of these things. Yes, that is what you need to do. So with that said, let me stop sharing here for a second. So I think we've wrapped this up. So on this fundamental series, we have done sales, we've done quarterly earnings, we've done annual earnings. Now we've done the return on equity, pre-tax and after-tax margins, and we've shown you how to do the stuff within the sectors, which is probably the most important part, or industry groups of this. We might stop with the fundamental series. I mean, there's other things that we could do, but I'll probably just get back to the regular stuff. But I wanted to have this because it's very important. It's very important, and it's so important for position trading, right? Because with position trading, you need to have confidence that you've got the best stock in the group or the best stock in the sector. So how do you do that? Yes, you look at the chart, but you really look at the fundamentals and you look at the full picture. You don't just look at sales. You don't just look at earnings. You just don't look at return on equity or margins. You look at the mosaic. You put them all together. And then obviously sponsorship by most people is thought of as a separate thing. But Bill and I would look at it as a fundamental thing. And that was his original idea. And it totally made sense to me that his thought was, okay, if you're Fidelity, all right, a big or someone like that, but he would always use Fidelity because he liked Fidelity and they were our largest or his largest customer. That they have all these companies that are coming and pitching them. So the CFO and the CEO will come in and bring the PowerPoint presentation and explain to them what they're doing, or they would have their team like go out and visit the companies as well. So this deep dive into the fundamental work that he just couldn't do, nor could the rest of us. We just didn't have the bandwidth. So it was leaning on them, the fund families, to go in and research these companies and then decide what to trade. So that was actually his biggest way of using fundamentals, was from the sponsorship. And that's something that we're not probably going to tackle for a while, because there's a lot of room for improvement, so to speak, with our sponsorship and the way we lay it out. And I just don't like the way we lay it out. And so that's next on the list to do after I get through pattern rec and growth 250 and doing all the ratings. And we're redoing the market surge, platform and everything. There's so many moving parts going on that I'm actually having to step away from IBD live in a big way. And that's my favorite part of being back at IBD, was IBD live. But I don't have the mental capacity to do swing trader and my other work there and doing all these new things that I'm working on and being on live 3 times a week like I currently am, as well as I was doing their lists, the IBD live watch list and ready list. And I'd spent about 3 hours a day on those. That was a big deal. So now the team is doing them. So one day, like Dave will do it. The next day, Chris will do it. The next day, Justin will do it. But I'm not going to be involved with those lists anymore. And we're going to be going down to me just being on IBD Live once a week until I get through all these projects, because I don't even have time to do once a week. But I just love the show so much that I just want to, I don't get paid for it or anything. So I don't think I'm trying to promote it. I guess I should have gotten an agent or something. But look, I love it. I absolutely love it. It's so much fun teaching and teaching. We do that like 10 minutes before the market opens until like an hour and a half into the trading, something like that. And every day, and it's just a ton of fun. It's a great community, and there's feedback because people are putting in their questions to us. Sometimes not so nice comments, frankly. Not so nice comments. So some people will be happy that I'm not going to be on 3 times a week. I don't think I'm everyone's cup of tea, but it is what it is. I'm an acquired taste, or maybe not acquirable. So anyways, I'm just really, really swamped with that stuff, but I'm still doing these because I really am on a mission I really want to have everything documented to teach my kids, if they're turning 24 in 2 days, if they ever decide that they want to trade and I'm not around, I want them to learn from me or have the ability to learn from me. So that's was my motivation for starting this, was to record them. And then I was just going to record them and just keep them for myself on a cloud or something. But then I thought, yeah, wow, like what if I pass and the credit card number doesn't get updated? Like I'm a worrywart. Like there's so many, I could spend hundreds of hours building this thing for my kids and really future grandkids, because I don't know if my kids are ever going to really get into trading, but one day they'll have kids. And I wanted their kids, my future grandkids, to learn from me. And I wanted to have something there. I didn't want them learning from somebody else. And I put this on the last episode. I was asked, it was a great honor, and I can't say who, but a legendary trader had asked me he was just too busy to teach his adult son how to trade, like an adult, like older than me, adult, how to trade. And he asked me to teach him. And it was meant the world to me that he thought that I should, because there becomes an assumption when someone has a last name. Like I can really relate to how like Wolfgang Van Halen must feel about, like, yeah, everyone just assumes that he just must be a great guitar player because of his last name and his blood. Now it's like the dude worked his ass off to learn the drums and then the guitar and the bass and how to sing and all this stuff. I'm just just so impressed with him, and nothing is, handed. You're like, so everyone, you just don't like, just like the Baldwin people, they all look the same, but it doesn't mean that they have the same skill set. And so, anyways, I was just really, it made me think a lot. It's like, wow, you get so busy with your stuff, putting out fires and working on things, that if you don't get a chance to teach the people that really matter, your family, you should change that. So that's why, I'm doing these, because I wanted something left for them, or really for my grandkids years from now, to learn from me, directly from me, not something else. And I also want to, write a book to leave behind, and that's something that I'm going to use these for, to is kind of my rough draft, and then when I get some time, I'll put them together. But if I never have time to do it, I wanted to have something. So that's for them, but also it's very important to me to have something for everyone, because I'm a big believer in karma. I'm a big believer in helping other people, and I think you. Like Sammy said it best, like you got to give to live. Like the more you give, it becomes very addicting. You want to help others. And then it's like, if you didn't help others that day, you're like, wow, man, that was not a valuable day. Like if you didn't help anybody, what a waste of a day. So I'm doing this to help folks who, some of you can more than afford to pay me $400 an episode or something like that. But I wanted to have it for everyone, people who don't have $4, because I was that person. I remember Michi's Pizza, I think it was Tuesdays or Wednesdays, it was like $3.33 for a large pizza, and I would look forward all week to get that, and I would stretch that pizza out over a couple days. Like that's how I survived. So I was broke as can be, man. Like broke, 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 broke. I wouldn't change that for anything, because then it really teaches you the importance of things, and also how things don't really matter. What really matters is family. So and friends and helping others and stuff, but things aren't important. So with that said, I'm doing this to help you guys out. So your tuition for each episode, and I think I forgot it in the last one, I was just so tired. I recorded last night. Every episode, you have to be kind to something, someone. I've said it to really to try to make the point, an insect, that if you're going to go and, like, there's a cricket in your house, or a cockroach, or what we had, because we've got woods behind us, we get all sorts of things in the house. Like we had a frog somehow get in the house, and so I spent like a half an hour trying to get the frog out, and had flies in my office, and I didn't want to kill the flies. Like, why? Like, why? Because they're just a fly? Well, it's just a cow. That's just a person. That's just a dog, just a whatever. Like, why? And so I spent like 20, 30 minutes getting them out, because they were driving me crazy. So being kind to animals, insects, friends, enemies. I'm always kind to enemies, because I don't talk about them. And that's my way of being kind, because I easily could, and I choose not to, because I'd rather take the high road than the low road. But they know who they are. And you're welcome for not calling you out. But anyways, just be kind, because that can really change. Someone's going through a really tough time, and kindness comes their way. It matters to them so much. I cannot tell you. And I've had some kind things done recently, and it could be as little as just a nice comment in YouTube. It takes you 30 seconds. It means the world to me. Or you just tell someone you appreciate them. Means the world. I've said it before with Bill. Like, he just did not tell people good job, and that really bothered me. And we would all talk about it. People would be like, "Oh, well, did Bill ever tell you?" Now, on the outside, he would tell people good job all the time. Like, that wasn't a big deal. But it was his inner circle, his people that really worked their asses off for him, that he wouldn't say good job. But there would be these conversations. Oh, well, in 1978, Bill said you did a really good job on that. And I'm not kidding. Like, people would remember the year, and it would be like one time. And he's my idol and all in the stock market, but I have different idols in other areas. And like my parents, So, people that you want to look up to idolize the qualities in them that you see and recognize there are, top notch. And so that's, being kind and saying good job to someone, or that was excellent. Like, you can find something, like someone could be like totally fail. And I've seen this happen so many times, like totally fail on a presentation or something, but there's something in there that was good, or a project or something. Just find it and just go, well, be sincere. Like, don't find BS in there, because then they're going to know it. And then there's going to discount anything you say. But if there's something to be said, there's sometimes there's nothing positive to say. So don't say anything, because it's insincere. But find something, say something positive to them, because it can go a really long way. I remember when people would say positive things about certain things, and it's like, wow, all that work was for something. So I know I rambled on way too much. And what are you going to do, man? You don't have to watch, but I'm just trying to spread some kindness. So with that, be kind. Let me know what you'd like to see on future episodes, because I'm going to try to do a bunch of interviews, but I've got logistics are a problem for me with that. So I'm probably going to go back and start doing model book stocks and then some other things. But let me know what you'd like, and I'll do that. Whatever. If there's a bunch of people that want the same thing, I'll do that. With that said, go be kind and peace out.